As the war in Russia and between Russia and Ukraine continues to grind on, we have one of the concerns that I've had really from the outset here is that with the West getting involved in the war and the war expanding beyond its borders, you've heard me talk many times about that's the absolute no pin line. That's what the U.S. cannot do, and by all means must keep the war contained to the borders. Zelensky has been trying to push the boundaries of this to try to pull us in more and more. Now he's at it again. He's got a new one here. And right now, I believe it's the New York Times or Washington Post one is reporting that Zelensky is saying, hey, how about you guys shoot down the missiles that are coming in on our country? And look, this is just basically another attempt at the no-fly zone that he tried to get in the beginning to draw our forces in there. Now he's saying, in some of the other reports I've seen, Zelensky's going, hey, you know what? I'll sign a waiver. So if you shoot down some of these missiles and they fall like on Poland or some of these other NATO countries, that it won't be Article 5. Oh, that's really nice of you. I really appreciate that. But here's the problem. If the missile falls and it kills Western troops or Western people, I'm not sure that anybody's going to be buying off on that. And there's going to be, especially in the Eastern European countries, I've seen some representatives of those countries recently, and they are not exactly in a forgiving mood if anything happens to their people. And look, we just got to call this what it is. Zelensky is probably saying, hey, I'd be okay with that happening. I'll claim that I'm not looking for an Article 5, but I think that he actually is. And we should not even be playing around with it. And this still gets back to, this is not going to make any difference. This is not going to change the outcome of the war, because there's some real issues with, even if we wanted to do that, if we wanted to provide that ammunition and those kinds of capacities, I'm not sure we have it. Now, here from just a week or so ago was the Secretary of State. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Before we get to that, here is Zelensky actually saying that he needs more air defense, but he's only got about 25%. Check this out.
Вони хочуть наступати. Вони розуміють, що Харків – це дуже складно, це велике місто. І вони розуміють, що у нас є сили, які будуть довго воювати. Тобто їм треба кинути великі сили для цього. Тому для них найважливіше відтягнути наші війська максимально зі Сходу. Тобто на сьогодні 7 мінімум систем плюс, до тих систем не буду казати, що є в нас. А в цілому ми маємо десь порядка, я би так сказав, я вважаю, що на сьогодні 25% від того, що потрібно, щоб захистити Україну.
By the way, folks, if you're wondering, again, this is not my normal setup here in Washington, D.C., because I'm still in London. So this is a station in Eastern London, which I pulled off on just to continue to update you on this information going on here. There we have Volodymyr Zelensky saying, I've got about 25% of what I need. So I need some more, but he needs like 4 times the amount. So he thinks, and he thinks that might be done. I'm still not convinced that would do it, but that's still not even going to affect the situation on the ground to any material level, because air defense is crucial, air power is crucial. But if you don't have the manpower on the ground, and they don't, then those additional things are not going to be decisive. But there's a bigger problem even than that, and that is we're not sure the West has that number of systems to give them. Check this out just a few days ago when the Secretary of State was talking about trying to find some available air defense systems.
On the Patriot batteries, as I mentioned, we are intensely focused on Patriots and other forms of air defense, and making sure that we can find them, bring them to Ukraine. Kharkiv, of course, is one urgent priority. There are others. All I can tell you is this is something we discussed in detail and that we're actively and urgently working on.
So you see there, it's not even clear that the United States has enough. And by the way, so I'm still here in London. The London media this morning is reporting that one of the senior, I think it's retired generals in the British military is also saying, hey, we're not even sure we could defend ourselves if there was an attack, say from Russia. Let's say if the war got expanded and also they're firing intercontinental ballistic missiles or even theater ballistic missiles in the direction. He's saying our defense is not as good. I'm not making this up. He actually said this in print and media today, that look, our air defense system isn't as good as the Ukraine side. So that ought to tell you something else. The wise move here is to say, let's not even risk the possibility of expanding this war in such ways that it may not be able to defend our own selves. And the only path, the only way that even gets into the realm of possibility is if we expand the war. So we should not be going down this path, but we continue to seem to be doing so, because Zelensky is not content merely with saying, hey, give me your air defense systems and your Patriots. He's also saying, you know what, it would also be cool if you would shoot down the Russian missiles over Russia.
Russians are using 300 planes on the territory of Ukraine. We need at least 120 to 130 planes to resist, to fight back in the sky. You can't provide that right now. Okay, so we're going back to air defense. You can't provide that either. F-16s, you can't provide that yet. So we are returning to the planes that you have on the territory of neighboring NATO countries. Raise them up. They are there. Use them. Shoot down targets. Protect civilians.
Okay, listen, we just got to be honest. Let me explain some things that may not be self-evident. So he's talking about, let's attack Russian missiles in Russian territory, or even over NATO territory, whatever he's saying. Yeah, don't worry. Give me all your Patriot systems. Okay, I'm telling you, that's not enough. It gets back to what I've been saying forever. And now Zelensky admits it in this passage here. He is saying, I need more men, because I need to be able to rotate my brigades. I've got brigades that I don't have enough equipment for them. I don't have enough men for them. We need more brigades. Yeah, no kidding. You need a whole army, and you don't have it, and you're not going to get it. You're doing everything in your power to force large numbers of men into uniform in Ukraine, but they're unwilling to go. They're trying to escape by the thousands, and the ones that are not able to escape and come in are terrified of coming in, because they've seen what happens to the hundreds of thousands who came before them. They know the things that we're talking about right here is that there is no capacity for them to win. So their lives are just being thrown away. So instead of recognizing that you just don't have the foreign stuff you need, you don't have the air defenses you need, and you don't have the men you need. Any rational leader would say, I'm not going to subject my people to more death and destruction pointlessly. Something that can't succeed, that there's no capacity for it, while my enemy grows stronger every day in all the categories that I'm growing weaker in. That's the responsible thing to do. If you're a leader, if you're an actual leader of a country, sometimes the best thing that you can do, the thing that you need to do most of all, is not act tough, is not talk tough, is not say, hey, we're going to stand up no matter what, is to say, I'm calculating the cost here. I'm calculating the capacities for my side and for the other side. There's no path here. And to continue to subject my own people to this path here is to condemn them to death. That's the reality of it here. And it's playing out every way we all the time on the battlefield. Information coming out of the tactical updates today are talking about in these areas, up in the north, in the Kharkiv area, maybe even possibly in the Sumy area coming up, but definitely in the all along the Donetsk area in the eastern part. Russia continues to open the FAB bombs I'm talking about, with the heavy artillery, with the air power, with the ground forces. I mean, really all of them. And in fact, here is a Ukrainian soldier, one of their leaders, who was interviewed remarkably on film, showing you exactly what it looks like from the ground, from their side.
This is just the first wave. They are testing our defenses. They are preparing their artillery. When they completely enter the town, they will bring in their reserves. It's shocking. We are having to defend ourselves again, losing territory and the lives of soldiers. This time, the enemy came much more prepared.
That's just one glimpse. And I'm telling you, I read this stuff every day. Just scour the net from it. Russian media, Ukraine media, Western media. I look at all of it, and you see a consistent pattern between them. This is not Russian propaganda. This is battlefield reports. And you see it from their own mouths, except from their leaders, except from our leaders. And so if we were a responsible leader, I just told you what Zelensky should do for his own country. Here's what our leaders should be doing, the same thing. They're saying it's foolish to continue to provide you capabilities and hope that things could change when it's just resulting in more of your people being killed and more of your territory lost. But instead, we have this nonsense from our Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, going down this path.
Ukraine's survival and success are central to Ukrainian security, European security, global security, and American security. We're meeting at a moment of challenge. Putin's invaders have launched another offensive onto sovereign Ukraine territory. And the Kremlin's forces will try to make further advances in the weeks ahead and try to carve out a buffer zone along the Ukrainian border. This is a hard and dangerous fight. but Ukraine's defenders are showing extraordinary courage and skill.
So instead of doing the right thing, instead of doing what has an actual possibility of success, we keep saying these things that are nonsensical. So that it's at NATO level, U.S. level, Ukrainian leadership level. Who's the bill payers for all this? I hate to keep saying it, sound like a broken record, but it's the men like that guy I just showed you a second ago. It's the men who were under those bombs that Gary showed you just a second ago. Every freaking day. Why do we not care about those people? The military fundamentals, they can't be changed. They just are what they are. You can overcome them only with other fundamentals. And, and you keep seeing this, like this headline was showing there from the New York Times, where Zelensky's like, hey, dude, what's the problem, man? Just change everything. That's what he wants you to do. He wants you to change everything so that you bring all of your economies into a wartime for his sake. But look, here's the thing. Even if you somehow succeeded, let's say that he somehow convinced, just through insanity, NATO to say, yes, we're going to enter the war on your behalf. We're going to come in with our conventional forces to change the dynamics. All those things I just mentioned. You know what that would mean then? That means nuclear war. Because Russia is in the process, I believe right now, even as we speak here, that they're doing tactical nuclear exercises. They're practicing on the very thing right now. Russian doctrine, we've known this for a long, long time, calls for the use of tactical nuclear weapons. It's something that we don't even talk about very much, but Russians do. And if there's one thing that we know about Russia, they lie about lots of stuff, like all the time, left and right. But the one thing that you can tell that over time they have been actually honest about is what they would do if certain conditions are met. They will use force under certain conditions. And these are them. And they're being very plain and open. They were very plain and open saying they would use force to keep Georgia out of NATO in 2005 or 6, I think it was. They were plain that they would use in 2014 limited power to keep Ukraine and Crimea out of NATO. Now that when that didn't work, now that they told behind the scenes plainly to Western leaders, and we know for a fact Stoltenberg was one, and we have good reports that Biden was one, that they would use war to keep NATO out in 2022, to keep NATO out of Ukraine in 2022. When they're now telling you that we will use tactical nuclear weapons if it gets into a war between NATO and Russia, when Putin openly acknowledges accurately that their conventional is not matched and Russia couldn't stand up to that, they would use tactical nuclear weapons. If it's an existential fight, and that's what it would be for Russia, they'll use nuclear weapons. It is foolish to the highest degree to say, hey, we don't think they would do it. You've heard Ben Hodges say that before. Zelensky has said that. Zelensky has said, yeah, just don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. Just ignore that. Do what I'm telling you to do. Let's take a chance. I'm willing to risk all of your security, all of the NATO, all these countries in the Western Europe that are currently not at war. I'm willing to risk you going to war so that you do what I want you to do. And our politicians are actually considering it. That's what's driving me crazy here. This stuff doesn't make any sense, folks. And listen, I'm telling you, militarily, it doesn't make sense. Diplomatically, it doesn't make sense. Economically, it doesn't make sense. Morally, it doesn't make sense. Let's stop doing the stupid things and start doing some things that make sense for us. Things that make sense for Ukraine. Stop listening to the people like Zelensky, Biden, Austin, all of these people that aren't making any sense at all. We're going to have to see some things change, folks. If we're going to keep this war from expanding and people from dying who should never die, then we're going to have to see some changes here. And I'm going to keep bringing this stuff for you, folks. We're going to keep you abreast of all the things that are going on. We're going to keep bringing you stuff, hard-hitting stuff like this, things that are unpleasant to hear about, but this is the truth. This is what you need to know. Share this with your friends. Make sure everybody else knows the truth, and I'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.